بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. Sisters and brothers, Salamullahi alaikum wa rahmatuhu wa barakatuhu. I start by recognizing and greeting our leaders, vice chancellors, deans, professors, malams, lecturers. Thank you very much for attending this program. I also would like to express gratitude to those who organize this program because each subject is very important for all of us. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that all of us benefit from attending, listening, discussing, and exchanging points of view. I'll be talking about leadership and management as perceived using the two sources of knowledge we know in Islam. That is Aql, human knowledge based on observation and experimentation, and Naql, that is knowledge based on transmission or learning. Leadership sometimes is misunderstood. Leadership and followership are the same thing. There are no leaders without followers, just as there are no followers without leaders. The two are actually the same thing. And the essence of everything in society is leadership. Because when there is no leadership, the society cannot move or work or be organized in a harmonious way. The Prophet ﷺ told us, إذا خرج ثلاثة في سفر فليؤمروا أحدهم. رواه Abu Dawood. If there are three people on a journey, they should choose one of them as a leader. What does that tell us? That in any situation, in any place, whether at home or on the road, you must have a leader. So if you're three of you in a car, you need to designate one of you in the car as the leader, because without leadership, things do not work very well. And this can happen very easily if you're in a car and the police stop you. So if each one of the three talks to the policeman will get confused. But if you already chose one of you as a leader in advance, that one will speak and explain, and things will move in a smooth way. Now, Islam being a practical religion, it requires training in all skills, in all areas of endeavor. Nothing practical can be done without training. In the same way, leadership is a practical skill and requires training. In fact, Islam is so serious about training that you are trained from what you do in the toilet, exactly practical training, to what you do in international leadership. So when we talk about leadership, basically we are talking about how do we train our people to be good leaders. And as I said, good leaders are also with good followers. So you train the leaders and also train the followers so that the management or leadership situation will be successful. And one of the conditions that are required for leadership is to be trained and to be tested. And after testing, only the morally upright qualify to be leaders. Quran tells us in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 124, وَذِ ابْتَلَى إِبْرَاهِيمَ رَبُّهُ بِكَلِمَاتٍ فَأَتَمَّاهُنْ قَالَ إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا قَالَ وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِي قَالَ لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. So, Ibrahim ﷺ was tested with several tests, and he passed the test very well. After passing, Allah said, إِنِّي جَاعِلُكَ لِلنَّاسِ إِمَامًا. I'm going to make you a leader of the people. But when Ibrahim asked, what about my offspring? Allah said, لَا يَنَالُ عَهْدِ الظَّالِمِينَ. Only those who are not transgressors will be included, which means that a leader must be morally upright. And that's the problem that we are facing today in our societies, in our villages, our associations, in our government departments, that there is a lot of immorality going on. Many of us blame the leaders. The leaders are not good. But I want to persuade you that this is not the right thing. Leaders and followers, if things are not going well, they are all bad. Good leaders cannot be good leaders if the followers are not good. If followers are good, leaders will be good. So it's this situation that we need to remember. It's not only the people who are in the leadership position, it's also us, the followers. After all, where do the leaders come from? They come from the followers. When we remove one leader, we get another one from the followers to take up the position. If the followers are not morally upright, it means the next leader will not be morally upright. So a good leader depends on good followers. There is a hadith, or it is a saying, because it's not according to the technical rules of hadith classification, it's considered da'if. It's weak, but what it says is very true. It says, كما تكونوا يولى عليكم. The way you are is the way your leadership is. If the followers are good, the leaders will be good. If the followers are bad, the leaders will be bad. And that is what Quran also tells us in Surah Al-Furqan when describing the mu'minun, the believers, and their attributes. وَالَّذِينَ يَقُولُونَ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. The believers are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَاجْعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. Make us leaders of the God-fearing. This means that a good leader is looking for good followers. So leadership is a situation that consists of both leaders and followers, and that's what I'm going to talk about in the rest of my presentation. Now, what are the sources of knowledge on leadership? There are two sources. There is al-ilm al-aqli, knowledge, human knowledge, based on experience and research. Leadership now can be researched, we can analyze, we can do a lot of things. That's human empirical experience. But also we can learn about leadership from leadership models in the Quran. The Quran has taken great lengths to explain to us the behavior and characteristics of good leaders, such as Musa and Sulaiman, also that we may follow them. It also explained the characteristics and behaviors of bad leaders like Fir'aun. So we learn a lot from the Quran about leadership. And I wish as we read the Quran, we really draw lessons from the Quran, because everything that makes somebody a bad leader is there. Everything that makes somebody a bad leader is there. We also can learn from our heritage at Turath, the long history of our civilization from the time of the Prophet until today. We have had many experiences in leadership, and there are many lessons that we can learn from that experience. Now let us look at Ahad al-Risala, the time of the prophethood. In the Meccan period, the prophet's mission was training people in personal discipline and knowledge and understanding, because the Muhajirin who were with him in Dar al-Arqam were going to be the leaders of the Ummah. So he took 13 years training them. They were very well trained, very well equipped with knowledge and skills. And when the Prophet ﷺ had enough potential leaders, it was time to migrate to Medina, where they would be the leaders and followers in a new state. So Mecca was training in the leadership situation that consisted of leaders and followers. After the Prophet ﷺ, we had the era of Al-Khilafah al-Rashida. The leaders in this period also were well trained by the Prophet ﷺ. They were knowledgeable, they were very well tested. Abu Bakr and Omar are model leaders who still inspire us up to today. Now, the Khulafa were very strong leaders, very capable leaders, very knowledgeable leaders. But their followers also were well trained. And that's why the Khilafah Rashida was successful, because the leader and the political base, which are the followers, were both very well trained. They both understood. They were all morally upright. So when you get a strong leader plus strong followers, you get a strong state. The Medinan state was strong because it had strong leaders and strong followers. So when you look at our situation today, you need to analyze it with this equation in mind, that if we have got leadership problems, it means we have problems on the side of the leaders and on the side of the followers, because it's always one situation. The Khilafah Rashida fell and collapsed and was replaced by dynasties. Why did it fall? Because of lack of education. This is what happened. The Prophet ﷺ took 13 years to train the Muhajirin in Mecca. And then when he went to Medina, he had 10 years to train, give them details, inspiration, understanding. But what happened after that, Islam spread very quickly, because sometimes the seeds of failure are in the success. The quick spread of the religion within 40 years to reach China in the east and Africa in the west, this quick spread of the da'wah, it absorbed many people, many new converts, and there wasn't time to give them the same quality of education and training as was given to the Muhajirin or the Sahaba who were in Mecca, or the Ansar who were in Medina. The time was too short, so they were not well educated, which means that they were not a strong political base for the state. And once the political base of the state was weak, the state had to collapse. And in its place, dynastic rule. And as you know, the dynastic rule had a lot of problems that historians know. Al-Ahad al-Amawi, Al-Ahad al-Abbasi, Al-Ahad al-Uthmani. Those were periods we had successes, but also compared to the state of Medina, those were periods of relative decline, because the training of the leaders and followers had lagged behind. Now, the Muslim scholars were always aware of the decline in leadership, and they were always trying to make movements of reform, al-Islah wa Tajdid. So the Mujaddidin, those who wanted to renew, they arose in every century, and they led movements of renewal and reform, Islah and Tajdid. One common thing among all the Mujaddidin was that their movements were education and training a broad mass of the people. We have got a very good example here in northern Nigeria. The Sokoto movement was basically for mass education. Our Sheikh Usman Danfodio and all his assistants and students, they were basically teachers, writing books, clarifying things. So Tajdid is about education, but I want to emphasize it's education of the masses, because if you educate only the leaders and the masses are not educated, the leadership situation will fail. So these movements of Tajdid have continued in all these centuries up to today in West Africa, North Africa, West Asia, South Asia, and they learned that we need to have rigorous individual training programs. In fact, some of them were so strict that they never allowed people to become members until they went through a rigorous training program, because leadership, followership are about training, education, and understanding. Now, what happened was that later on, many of these movements also started going into the political arena, and the area of tarbiyah and training was neglected to a certain extent with the bad results. So the leaders who had been trained before retired, they became old, but the replacements hadn't gone through the same training as before. I'm sure you know very well, even in Nigeria, people talk about the 1970s, with a lot of pride. But then when they talk about today, they don't have the same amount of pride. Why? Because the training that was given in the 1970s was not continued at the same intensity. So the inability to bring in new blood of people well trained to be the best of the society, of the organization, was the cause of problems. Now, we've had programs of leadership training all over the world when we realized in the 1990s that organizations, Muslim organizations in all countries, were weakening in terms of leadership. So we had serious programs of leadership training, but after the year 2000, these also became limited because resources were no longer available. So now, what are the lessons that we learned from our history about leadership and management? The first lesson is that the fall of the Khilafah Rashida was due to low levels of education or knowledge about leadership and followership in the political base of the Khilafah. And that without continuing leadership training, we become weak. The second lesson we learn is that training and tarbiyah and social activism, actually going out in the society and organizing things, relief programs, education programs, are equally important. When we do programs without doing tarbiyah and training, things are going to collapse sooner or later. You cannot neglect training and tarbiyah, because training and tarbiyah train the leaders, train the followers for a strong leadership situation. And I think resources should always be available for da'wah, leadership training, and tarbiyah, because that's what keeps us strong. Once we have got good tarbiyah of leaders and followers, we can stay strong. We neglect it, we start declining. And what happens is that really we need to start with the training, with the tarbiyah, because after you have trained many people to be good leaders and good followers, then you deploy them in various fields. You send some to business and finance. They will run your banks without corruption. Education, they will run your education institutions in an efficient way. They will run the mass media in a moral way. So social reform, economic activities. So once you train the people to have a very strong base of understanding Islam, of understanding the necessary knowledge in the religion that every adult must have, al-ma'lum min ad-din bil-darura. When you train them in the moral structures of Islam, when you train them very well, then you can send them into any field, into any activity, and you can be sure that they are going to do well. Now, I want to end by mentioning something that we're trying to do in East Africa after realizing that the training at the level of the masses is really low, and that is a cause of many weaknesses and deficiencies. We are starting a basic Islamic education and tarbiyah program to be run from small children until university in a serious way, in an organized way, in a systematic way. Inshallah, if we succeed in this program, we hope and pray that the future will be well, inshallah. Thank you very much for listening to me. And once again, I want to apologize for not being able to come and be with you in this great city of Kano. There were problems that prevented me. Inshallah, in the future, I will make the endeavor to come and be with you in person. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Wa akhir da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.